Thank you all for joining us today in our last of our series on Change Your Thinking. Today, we're going to specifically talk about those should and shouldn't statements and personalizing the blame. We've been doing several weeks of these different thought patterns, distorted, twisted thought patterns, and diving deeper into the common ones like labeling or emotional reasoning, what it sounds like, maybe some reasons why we do it, the damage of those thoughts, but then how do we reframe those thoughts so we can live a more positive life? If you have missed any of those or want to learn more about other thought patterns, just go to our YouTube channel and we have been recording those and you can watch those programs as well. But today, talking about these should and shouldn't statements, or just talking about distorted thought patterns in general, we all have twisted or distorted thought patterns. And most of the time, these thought patterns, it's really just kind of we're looking at things negatively. We have negative thoughts. We feel pessimistic about things, a view of things. It might be a pessimistic view of a situation or a relationship or the world at times, right? Or we think, the glass is half empty. And sometimes we do think the glass is half full too, right? We blow things out of proportion. There's a whole host of stuff we do. But if we reinforce these negative thoughts or we don't ever challenge these negative thoughts, they really do cause real damage in our lives interpersonally, but also with other people in our lives as well. They increase anxiety and depression. They increase our low self-esteem or low self-worth. There's difficulty in relationships, and it really just adds undue stress in our lives. The great thing about this is we are able to change our thoughts, in which we'll be able to change our lives as well. And there are several different patterns of thought that are twisted or distorted. And a lot of it is we are just misinterpreting a situation. We are not viewing reality, the situation, the relationship. We're not viewing it accurately. And what happens is when we're not doing this turns our perceptions to one-sided. They're not fair, they're biased, they become bitter, they become false. We might view somebody else falsely. And again, this really does cause true damage, depression, anxiety, self-criticism, loneliness, feeling of helplessness or hopelessness as well. Talking specifically about the should and shouldn't statements. Wow, I should have done this. I shouldn't be doing that. These are the things that we tell ourselves that really do leave a pessimistic world or a pessimistic view of the world or the situation. We tell yourself that things should or shouldn't be the way that we expected them to be. There's also the musts and the oughts. I must be better, or I ought not to have done that. Kind of all in the same distorted thought pattern. We'd have the tendency to make unrealistic and unreasonable demands on our lives. This is what these statements do. And we all have these statements. It's just a matter of how do we change those, or can we recognize them when we see them? So it says, I must get over this. I ought to have done better. I should have known better. I should be able to do this. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't be this way. I'm a grown adult, right? I shouldn't be doing this. I should be doing that. We've all said this to ourselves. But we're also saying it to other people as well. So what happens when we say this to other people or use these statements on other people? They shouldn't be doing this or that, or they should not have said that, or they should be doing it this way. So there's a two-way street for that. An example I have here is, let's say your loved one wandered away from you in the mall. Everything turned out fine. Everybody was safe, but you can't let go of what happened because it's scary. We panicked. My loved one's got dementia. Maybe all sorts of stuff could have happened, right? But everything turned out fine, but I can't let go of what happened. So you think and you tell yourself, I should not have let that happen. I should have watched him better. So we got both of those in the same example, the same scenario. we're going to come back to that, but we're talking about these, those statements, even that one, just ruminating on that one situation I can't really let go of, that putting really unrealistic pressure and demands on ourselves. And guilt, it just leads to guilt. It just adds guilt to our lives when we're doing this. I shouldn't do this. I should have done that. I must be better. I ought to not do it. It's just adding this undue guilt and sometimes unrealistic guilt on us. It contributes to feelings of worry, to feelings of fear, of course, feelings of anxiety. It lowers your self-worth. There's a lot more self-criticism and self-defeatism in those statements as well. And you can feel just more hopeless about the situation. It can also lead to other behaviors of avoidance or even possibly rebellion in some ways. So if I know I should be doing something or I shouldn't have done that, and I keep telling myself about this, it's easier for me to avoid the situation or avoid doing the task. So again, what happens when we should and shouldn't others, right? And I like these questions here when I'm should and shouldn't others. My brother should have done this, or, my friend should not have done that, or they must change to be better. When we're doing this to other people, does it make us feel better when we have these statements? Maybe for a moment when we're venting, but in the long run, does it really make you feel better? And does it fix or solve anything? Generally not. What it does in the long run when we ruminate on these, especially when we're doing the should and shouldn'ts to others, is it makes us bitter. And that bitterness is caused by these statements. But again, a good thing is we can change these. So reframing the should and shouldn't statements, or the must and ought statements. First, we got to check in and we got to realize that we're saying them. We got to identify and know that what we're telling ourselves or what we're saying about others that might be false or unrealistic. So you want to ask, well, says who? As in who is setting the standard of what should or shouldn't happen? Where is that standard coming from? And then ask, is this true? If I should have done something differently, is that true? If the example earlier, I should have watched Dad better. Well, is that true? Have you been doing everything in your power and your know-how to watch him? Is there anything else that's more true? So if I think I should have watched Dad better, well, you know what? I've done everything to watch him. He's very safe. We have a security alarm at the house. I'm constantly with him. He never goes by himself. So what's more true about that? And ask yourself if you're feeling better or if you're feeling worse by shoulding on yourself or on others, right? And what would happen if you didn't use these statements? What if we just let things be as they were without any should or shouldn'ts? Dad wandered away from me in the mall. That's unfortunate. I'm going to change things next time. I don't want that to happen again, right? But I'm not going to should all over myself because of it. Because it's unnecessary. And it's not fair, really. So we want to reframe it. So instead of saying, I should have watched him better, I'm doing a good job. And next time I'll bring help. It won't just be me and Dad. I'll have somebody else so we have more eyes on them. And make a note of which of those statements makes you feel better and makes you feel more in control. I should have just watched him better makes me feel worse and I don't have control. But the statement of, you know what, I'm doing a good job and next time I'm going to bring somebody else. Makes me feel better about myself because I'm learning from some possible mistakes or things I want to do differently. And I feel more in control because I have a solution for the next time, or I have a plan for next time. And have some compassion. We've got to have some more compassion for ourselves and for others, of course, but allow yourself to feel compassion for yourself and for others, especially when they don't live up to what they should have, or we don't live up to what we think we should have. And keep a record of when we do these things, saying these statements, and ask yourself how your outlook has changed on life. So doing the reframing and keeping a record of it, because it really helps to see if I can write it down or I'm recording it, whatever, I can really see what the change that's happening from this thought work that we're doing, right? So talking about personalizing the blame, kind of switching gears a little bit, personalizing the blame or personalization and blaming is another distorted thought. Personalizing is I'm going to take on all the blame and all the guilt for something that was outside of my control. We see things as our fault on things that we could not have prevented. I like this picture here, you're pointing in the mirror and saying it's his fault. So you're blaming, but it's also personalization all at once. And the blaming is not taking responsibility for your actions, and you shift the blame on somebody else, or you shift the blame on others. So I'm blaming another person for the way things are turning out in your life. The dangers in personalizing and blame. So when we engage in these thought patterns, we don't get the opportunity to better ourselves or learn from possible mistakes or be able to correct ourselves. Because if I'm blaming somebody else, that means I have nothing to do with it. They need to change, not me, right? But if I'm just personalizing all this blame, it's all my fault, and I keep staying there, I can't see how I'm going to change or fix or correct myself because it's my fault. There's a lot of self-sabotage in these, in the personalizing, blaming thought patterns. Of course, they're going to add feelings of guilt. They're going to add feelings of inadequacy, feelings of helpless. I'm just a helpless person. And extreme frustration. And you're putting yourself in a no-win situation, right? If I'm blaming myself for something that I had no control of, that's a no-win situation. But if I'm putting blame on somebody else for things that go wrong in my life, then how can I win? If they have so much control in my life, how am I winning in that situation too? And it can also really damage relationships when we start pointing the finger at other people and not taking responsibility for our own actions. So example, personalizing, Dad had an angry outburst. I must have made him angry, right? So this is personalizing. I am taking responsibility for something that had nothing to do, not something I had nothing to do with. I don't know why Dad had an angry outburst, but I can't take on the blame for that because it's not in reality. For one thing, let's figure out what caused Dad to have an angry outburst, and then we can try and fix it from there, but not automatically assuming it's my fault. And then on the blaming side, so the example is, if she planned better, we would not be in this financial mess. Failing to take responsibility for something we failed to do as well, while blaming somebody else for the outcome. In both of these examples, the dad had an angry outburst and I must have made him angry. And then if she would have planned better, we would not be in this financial mess. Both of these examples, there is personalizing, there's personalization in it. It's either our fault or it's somebody else's fault. And somebody else's fault has a direct impact on my life. But there's also blaming in both examples. We're either blaming ourselves or blaming somebody else for our life events. And then there are large assumptions made that if anything goes wrong, there is someone to blame. There can be no mistakes, or there can be anything that goes wrong. Somebody has to take the responsibility, whether it's me or somebody else. And that's just not really reality either, right? A great example is getting a diagnosis of dementia. There's really nobody to blame in that situation. It's not the person's fault. They didn't cause the dementia, and it's not my fault. I didn't cause it. So doing the blaming and personalization doesn't make sense at that point. So reframing this personalizing and the blame. How do I take these thoughts and change them into more positive thoughts? So Dad had an angry outburst. I must have made him angry. Well, is this true? Again, what are the other possibilities that Dad had an angry outburst? I might have had a small part in it, or he might have misunderstood something that I said or did, but I can't take responsibility for his actions. What else is out there? What other possibilities are there? And then the example, if she planned better, we would not be in this mess. Well, it's asking ourselves, well, how many people were involved in this blaming situation? You know? And what part of that outcome, or what is my part of the outcome? What I really like about this in diving down into blaming and personalizing is I don't want to give away my power of the outcome of my own life. Because when I start to blame others and I don't take responsibility for the part I had in it, I am giving other people power over the outcome of my life. And I don't want to do that. Sometimes I do unintentionally, and I can go back and fix it, but I don't want to do that. And it's the same thing for personalizing stuff. I don't want to give undue power to things outside of my control that have an outcome in my life, right? Because I can, even though I don't have control over some things, I can control how I respond to them, how I change, how I see them, my perspective on them. So I don't want to give that power away on the outcome of my life for either personalizing or blame. So some other ways to reframe personalizing and blame. So when you start to blame yourself or you blame others, just stop and ask, is this true? Is this guilt or this blame, is this true based on reality? Whose fault is this anyway? Is it anybody's? Were there several people involved? Whose responsibility is this? Does everybody kind of have a stake in it? Does everybody's actions, decisions, thoughts, and words have something to do with the outcome? And do I need to do anything to correct the situation? Do I need to change something about me to correct the situation or help the situation be better? But also know it's not all on me. There's other people involved. And what can I learn from this? This is where we want to be able to grow and change and correct our ways. So we have to ask ourselves, what can I learn? This might not be the ideal situation, or what happened was not ideal. I wish I wouldn't have happened. But what can I learn and what can I do differently going forward? So all of these, the should statements, should and shouldn't statements, the personalizing and the blame, and all the other distorted thought patterns we've been talking about for the past several weeks, is knowing that we have the power to change our thoughts over time. We can take all these negative thought patterns, identify them, and then change them. One of my favorite quotes that I've just recently discovered is, a negative mind will never give you a positive life. We all want a positive life. I think that's a universal goal, but knowing a negative mind will never give me that positive life. But I also know that I have the power to change my thoughts. And when we change our thoughts, we change our emotions and our beliefs. We change how we feel, because our thoughts are going to influence those emotions. They're going to influence those beliefs. And then those emotions and beliefs are going to influence and change our decisions, our actions, and our behaviors. So if I'm having positive thoughts, or I'm reframing my thoughts into more positive things, more realistic things, it's going to change how I believe, what I feel about stuff, which will in turn change my decisions and my behaviors and my actions, which will also help me have better positive thoughts. So it's really the cyclical nature, and I want to make sure I'm feeding myself the right things, telling myself the right things to get me the positive life that I want, the satisfying life that I want, that quality of life that I want. So keep in mind, for any thought work that we're doing on changing a thought pattern, it is a process. There is a goal. The goal is progress, not perfection. It takes daily discipline to do this. And sometimes you might be working on one particular thought, one particular situation or area in your life, and you get so much better at it. But then also know a few years down the road, you might have to kind of go back and work on this again, to keep it up. It just takes discipline. It takes work. And we want to live in the present. We can't change the past, nor can we predict the future. When we're living in the past and ruminating there and kind of stuck there, that really has a lot to do with depression. But when we're living in the future and doing all the what ifs, what's going to happen, a lot of that is anxiety. So if I can stop and say, I'm going to live in the moment, I'm going to live in the present here, I'm going to do my thought work now. I know that when I'm doing positive thought work now, that's going to help for the future. It's also going to help me change my perspective on the past. And we don't have to go through this alone. It's really hard to see some of these negative thought patterns or twisted thought patterns on our own. So if you have a trusted person that you can talk to, somebody that will be real with you, but also a safe person that you can talk to help you see things differently, help you get a different viewpoint, just get different perspectives, and they can help you challenge these negative thought patterns. So know that you don't have to go through it alone. And I like these quotes. Positive people also have negative thoughts. They just don't let those negative thoughts control them. Because it's not all rainbows and butterflies, right? In our world, in our lives, but we don't let those negative thoughts control us. So, and your life is a reflection of your thoughts. If you change your thinking, you change your way of life. And here is the information here for the West Center. And I know I just went through a lot of pretty heavy information quickly, but I want to make sure if anybody has any questions or want to share anything about these particular thought patterns or any distorted thought patterns they've had and experiences they've had, please do. Well, okay. I encourage you all to start asking yourself those tough questions. Is this true? Can I see something differently? And do that thought work and do it daily. It does take daily work, daily discipline to really see a change. And I mentioned earlier, if you can write it down or record it so you can look back and see the change that is happening in your life. That really helps us stay with it, stick with it. And then we can reward ourselves and be proud of ourselves for our efforts. I will send everybody a copy of these slides and a copy of this recording later on this afternoon. And I'll also send you some information on the upcoming programs that we have. But I really appreciate you all for joining us, and we hope you have a good holiday season. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.